There is this incredibly frustrating, just universally relatable paradox that seems to kind of govern human existence.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
Right. And it's like, usually when we talk about wanting something in life, a promotion at work or a deeply fulfilling relationship or even just some specific personal goal, we are constantly taught that effort is purely linear.
Yeah, the classic input equals output mindset.
Exactly. You push hard, you hold on tight to the vision, you put in the grueling hours, and, well, eventually the vending machine of the universe just drops your prize.
Right, like you pull the lever enough times and you get the reward.
We treat it like basic physics. I mean, force equals acceleration.
Because the whole cultural narrative is relentlessly focused on grinding.
Yeah.
I mean, it is this pervasive idea that success requires this white-knuckle death grip on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And any relaxation of that grip, well, it just means you lack ambition.
But then, and this is where it gets crazy, you look at the actual loot experience of most people and you hit a wall.
You really do.
Yeah. Why is it that the more desperately you want something, the more you obsess over it, calculate the exact odds, try to micromanage every single tiny variable, the further away it seems to slip?
It's like a repelling force.
Yes. It is like you are actively repelling the very thing you desire. And conversely, why does that exact thing suddenly arrive the literal moment you genuinely truly stop obsessing over it?
Which is always how it happens, right?
Every time you drop it, you move on, you're like, whatever, and boom, the phone rings.
It feels like the ultimate cosmic joke, honestly. Like you finally stop caring and the universe decides to reward you out of nowhere.
Exactly.
And this is the core set we're looking at today. What the data reveals is that this isn't a cosmic phenomenon at all.
Not at all.
It is intensely, measurably biological and psychological. The actual act of, holding on too tightly creates a very real friction, and not just emotionally, but neurologically.
Which is wild. So for everyone listening, today's deep dive is all about the hard neuroscience of letting go. We are entirely tearing down this idea that surrender is just some, I don't know, passive, mystical, spiritual buzzword.
Right. It's not just a bumper sticker.
No. Instead, we are looking at the actual biological blueprints of how you can literally, physically rewire your brain to stop self-sabotaging.
Because it is a physical process.
It really is. So if you ever feel stuck in a loop, or if you feel like your intense desire for control is actually just ruining your life, this is not a theoretical discussion. We are talking about the invisible architecture inside your skull.
The literal wiring.
Right, the wiring that is dictating everything from your deepest, darkest anxieties to your greatest successes.
And we really need to validate something crucial right up front for you listening. If you struggle with letting go, you are not failing some kind of character test.
Oh, that's such a good point.
It's so important. Holding on isn't just an emotional weakness, right? It is a highly efficient physical neurological habit.
A habit your brain built on purpose.
Exactly. Your brain has physically constructed these massive superhighways designed to hold on to stress and to hold on to control. So to change the outcomes in your life, you have to literally demolish and rebuild the neural circuitry in your head.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that urge to control, which the information we're looking at often calls a mental prison.
It's a great term for it.
Because we all have it. The desire to force an outcome acts as a literal wall between you and the goal you want. There's this classic metaphor in the text. It's like holding a handful of water.
Oh, I love this analogy.
It's so perfect. If you keep your palm open and relaxed, the water just pools safely in your hand.
Right, it just sits there.
But the absolute second you try to squeeze it, to control it, to hold it tight so you don't lose a single drop, what happens? It instantly slips right through your fingers.
It's a beautiful visual for the emotional experience of it. But if we want to understand the actual mechanism behind it, like why it happens, we should look at how our brains process predictive patterns.
Okay, lay it on me.
Think of your brain kind of like the predictive text algorithm on your smartphone.
Oh, God, mine is terrible.
Right. But it's always trying to guess the next word. When you are desperately trying to control an outcome, your brain is furiously trying to autocomplete your reality.
Based on what, though?
Based on your past traumas, past failures, deeply ingrained fears, you get locked in this mental prison of endless strategizing.
Like, if my boss says X, I absolutely have to counter with Y or else Z is going to happen.
Exactly that loop.
Yeah.
And that relentless internal monologue consumes an immense amount of cognitive energy. You are squeezing the water, right? But biologically, You are suffocating your prefrontal cortex.
Wait, the prefrontal cortex, that's the part that does the logical thinking.
Yes, the logic, the planning, and crucially, the creative problem solving. You're shutting it down.
So by trying to control the situation to keep myself quote-unquote safe, I am actually shutting down the exact part of my brain that can navigate the situation successfully.
That is exactly what is happening.
Okay.
And the underlying psychology of why we squeeze our hands, even when we know perfectly well the water is going to spill, is just fascinating.
Right, because we know it doesn't work. Why do we do it?
Well, think about why we stay in toxic workplaces, or why people remain in deeply draining relationships, just endlessly trying to manage the other person's behavior.
Yeah, which is exhausting.
We don't do it because we enjoy the pain. We do it because the subconscious mind fundamentally prefers the familiar pain of the known over the terrifying, unmapped territory of the unknown.
Oh, wow. The familiar pain.
Yeah. The brain is essentially a prediction machine. A predictable misery is actually less threatening to the primitive brain than an unpredictable joy.
Predictable misery. That is incredibly dark, but it makes so much sense.
How we're wired.
I can predict exactly how my toxic boss is going to ruin my Tuesday, and therefore my brain feels this twisted sense of security. I am prepared for the attack.
Exactly. You have a script for it. We have confused the concept of control with the concept of safety.
But society tells us to never give up, right? The messaging is everywhere. Winners never quit. Keep pushing.
Always grinding.
Yeah. If you just let go, society immediately labels you a quitter. You're seen as passive. So how do we all reconcile that intense societal pressure with the biological necessity of letting go?
Well, we have to completely redefine what surrender actually means.
Okay, what does it mean?
True surrender, especially in a psychological and neurological context, is not giving up. It is not apathy at all.
It's not just throwing your hands up.
Right. It is not saying, I don't care about my career, I don't care about my partner, I'm just going to lie on the couch and stare at the ceiling.
Right.
Letting go is simply releasing your desperate, fear-based attachment to a specific result arriving on a specific timeline.
So it is the difference between dropping the steering wheel while driving down the highway, which is obviously reckless and apathetic.
Very bad idea.
Right. Versus just loosening your white-knuckled grip on the wheel so you can actually feel the road and steer smoothly.
That is the perfect distinction.
Yeah.
You are still driving the car. You're still showing up. You're doing the deep work, and you're setting your intentions.
But you remove the death grip.
Exactly. When you force an outcome, you create biological and interpersonal friction. You become rigid.
And when you're rigid, you snap.
Yes. Letting go removes the friction. It allows you to adapt to the reality of the situation rather than fighting this phantom version of it in your head.
Okay, so if we want to understand why we are gripping the wheel so tightly in the first place, the material points out we have to look at the subconscious roots of these behaviors.
We have to go back to the beginning.
Right, which brings up the phenomenon of vicious cycles. We all know people, or let's be honest, we are the people who find themselves having the exact same explosive argument with their partner every 3 months, almost like clockwork.
Like it's scheduled on a calendar.
Seriously. Or the person who keeps ending up with the exact same archetype of a micromanaging boss at 3 entirely different companies and 3 completely different industries.
Yeah, it really starts to feel like a curse.
It does. It feels like you are uniquely cursed by the universe.
It does feel that way, which is why psychology refers to it as repetition compulsion. But I promise you, it is not bad luck. The universe isn't out to get you.
So what is it?
These cycles are subconscious invitations. They are driven by deep, hardwired programming that was largely established during your formative years. Typically, we're talking about between the ages of 0 to 7.
Okay, wait. What exactly is happening in the brain during those years? Why 0 to 7? Why are we so incredibly vulnerable then?
Well, during those first 7 years, a child's brain is operating primarily in theta wave frequencies.
Theta wave?
Right. Theta is a state of deep relaxation. It's almost like a state of hypnosis.
Oh, wow.
A young child doesn't have the analytical filter of the conscious mind developed yet. They literally don't have the hardware for it.
So they can't rationalize things.
Exactly. They cannot look at a screaming parent and logically say, oh, well, dad is just stressed about the mortgage. This has absolutely nothing to do with my inherent worth as a human being.
Right. A 5-year-old can't do that math.
No. Instead, the child's brain acts as a raw, unfiltered sponge. It directly downloads the environmental data as absolute, unquestionable truth.
It just takes it all in as facts.
Yes. It downloads the rules of how the world works, how love is earned, what happens when you make a mistake, and fundamentally what you are actually worth.
So if you were taught that love is highly conditional, like you only receive attention when you are achieving something or getting good grades, your brain writes a permanent piece of code. I am only safe when I am perfect.
That's the code.
And then you carry that invisible script into your 30-year-old adult life.
You carry it everywhere. And worse, you unconsciously recruit people to play the roles that validate that exact script.
Wait, recruit people?
Yes. This introduces one of the most profound and honestly challenging concepts we encounter when studying human behavior, the idea of the external mirror.
The external mirror. Okay, unpack that.
It's the psychological premise that there is no one outside.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning, if you are constantly attracting angry, difficult, or dismissive people, the data suggests you have to look deeply inward. Life is just remarkably efficient at responding to your internal frequency.
That's intense.
It is. If you are operating from a subconscious place of intense scarcity, desperation, or unworthiness, you are effectively broadcasting a signal. You are showing the world exactly what you will tolerate.
Okay, hold on. Here is where I really have to push back, because this gets really confronting for a lot of people.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right, because if someone is stuck with a micromanaging, abusive boss, or they are in a relationship where they are constantly demeaned, and we sit here and say, well, life is just a reflection of your subconscious programming, your internal frequency attracted this abuse.
That sounds awful.
It sounds incredibly toxic. How is that not just blatant victim blaming? How do you process this without spiraling into massive self-blame? You start thinking, oh, great, my boss is screaming at me because my inner child is broken.
That is the absolute trap of this concept, and it is a vital, necessary pushback. It is so crucial to distinguish here between blame and responsibility.
Okay, what is the difference in this context?
Blame is entirely backward-looking. Blame is about guilt, it's about shame, it's about some kind of moral failing. When you are steeped in blame, whether you are blaming yourself or your terrible boss, you are in a passive, paralyzed state.
You're just stuck in the past.
Exactly. Responsibility, on the other hand, is forward-looking and highly active.
So acknowledging the subconscious root isn't about saying this is my fault.
Not at all. It is never your fault how someone else treats you. Think about it this way. If you say, I am purely a victim of this terrible boss, you might be factually 100% correct about their awful behavior.
Right.
But if that's where it ends, you have zero power to change your reality. Your only option is to sit there and wait for the boss to miraculously wake up one day and become a better person.
Which we both know is not a viable life strategy.
It never happens. You are entirely at their mercy.
Right. You have just handed over all your agency. You're trapped.
But if you shift the paradigm, if you say, my subconscious programming, which I absolutely did not choose and which was installed when I was a toddler, has led me to tolerate this unacceptable behavior, suddenly the entire dynamic shifts.
Because now you have something you can work with.
You hold the keys. You cannot change the boss. And it's absolutely not your fault the boss is abusive. But you absolutely can change the internal mechanism that keeps you sitting in that chair.
The mechanism that accepts the abuse instead of setting a boundary or just walking away.
Precisely. By taking full responsibility for your internal state, you reclaim the absolute power to dictate your external reality.
It is the shift from asking, why is this happening to me, to asking, what is the mechanism inside me that is allowing this to continue?
That's the exact shift.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do we actually find those hidden blocks? Because we can't just think our way out of it, right? Our conscious mind will just rationalize everything to protect us.
Right, your conscious mind is too smart for its own good.
So I know the text highlights a specific, highly recommended tool for this. Extensive physical writing. And not just typing on a laptop, but actually sitting down with a pen and a blank piece of paper and just dumping your feelings.
Yes, longhand journaling.
Why is the physical act of writing so much more effective for hacking the subconscious than just thinking about it?
Because the conscious mind is a brilliant, ruthless editor.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When you just ruminate on your problems, while you're driving or in the shower, your conscious mind sanitizes the narrative. It rationalizes your fears. It protects the ego.
It makes us the hero of the story.
Always. But when you sit down with a pen and paper and force yourself to write continuously without stopping to edit or spell check or judge the content, you eventually exhaust that conscious filter.
It's like you were outrunning the bouncer at the club.
Exactly. The cognitive load of translating abstract thought into physical motor movements on paper requires so much mental bandwidth that the inner critic eventually just gets tired and steps aside.
So it just gives up.
Yeah. Usually after a few minutes of superficial complaining on the page like, "I hate my commute, my coffee was cold today," the subconscious just takes the wheel.
And that's when the real stuff comes out.
You start writing things you didn't even know you felt. You might start writing about a frustrating email from a coworker, and by page 3, you are suddenly writing about a terrifying childhood memory of being overlooked by your parents.
Wow, you just bypass the firewall entirely.
You finally see the actual legacy code running in the background.
Seeing the code is a massive breakthrough. But seeing the code isn't the same as rewriting it.
Not even close.
Right. Awareness does not equal transformation. If I realize through journaling that I have this deep fear of abandonment that makes me incredibly clingy in relationships, well, knowing that doesn't magically stop the anxiety when my partner goes out of town.
No, the physical reaction still happens.
And this is the perfect bridge from the psychological realm into the hard biological science that the sources dive into. If our subconscious is running the show based on decades-old programming, how do we physically change the hardware?
This is where the abstract concepts of therapy and self-help become concrete, undeniable biology. We're talking about neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity, the buzzword of the decade.
It is, but for good reason. This is the brain's physical ability to mold, reorganize, and alter its own structural architecture based on experiences, thoughts, and behaviors.
Which is just incredible.
And crucially, this is the most important part. The brain maintains this ability until the very end of your life.
Which is a relatively new scientific understanding. Because for a long time, the scientific consensus was that once you reached a certain age, your brain was basically wet concrete that had dried.
Yes, the old dogma was that the adult brain was totally fixed.
Which is a terrifying concept, really. You were just stuck with whatever personality and neuroses you had by age 25.
It was incredibly bleak.
Yeah.
But the advent of functional MRI technology completely shattered that. We can now literally watch the brain physically remodel itself in real time.
That's mind-blowing.
To understand the scale of this remodeling, you have to realize that your brain contains roughly 85 to 86 billion neurons.
86 billion. It is one of those numbers that is so unfathomably large, it kind of loses all meaning.
It really is staggering. But the real magic isn't just the sheer number of neurons. It is in how they communicate with each other.
Okay, how does that work?
When you have a thought, when you experience an emotion, or when you perform an action, a neuron fires an electrical current. That current travels down the axon of the neuron and triggers the release of chemical messengers.
Neurotransmitters.
Exactly. They get released across a microscopic gap to the next neuron. That gap, that connection point, is called a synapse.
Okay, I'm with you.
And the golden rule of neuroscience, this was coined by Donald Head, is neurons that fire together, wire together.
Neurons that fire together, wire together. I want to make this intensely visual for everyone because understanding this mechanism changes everything about how you view your habits.
Visuals help immensely.
Let's use that highway analogy from the text. Let's think about this process like building a road through a really dense jungle.
Perfect.
Imagine you're standing at the edge of an overgrown thick jungle. You want to get to the other side. The very first time you have a brand new, empowering thought. Let's say you decide, I'm going to firmly set a boundary with my mother today. It is like trying to hack your way through that jungle with a dull machete.
Yes. It requires a massive amount of conscious metabolic energy.
It's exhausting.
The brain is actively fighting you because there is no pre-existing pathway for that behavior.
Sure.
You are literally forging a new neural connection from scratch.
Yeah.
You leave a very, very faint dirt path behind you.
Right. And it is so hard. But the next day, you decide to reinforce that boundary again. You walk down that exact same dirt path.
And it is still hard, but maybe a tiny bit of the brush is already cleared.
Exactly. If you keep doing it, day after day, week after week, that dirt path is widened, it gets packed down, it becomes a paved 2-lane road, the biological resistance drops. And if you keep repeating that thought and that behavior for months, that 2-lane road becomes a massive, high-speed, perfectly smooth 6-lane expressway. The thought becomes entirely automatic. You don't even have to try.
You just do it.
That is the exact biological mechanism of how a new behavior becomes a hardwired habit.
And we're not just talking about abstract metaphors here.
Yeah.
This is physical. The brain actually physically insulates these highly trafficked expressways using a substance called myelin.
Myelin, what does that do?
Myelin is a fatty sheath that wraps around the axon of the neuron. It acts exactly like the rubber insulation around a copper electrical wire.
Oh, to keep the electricity in.
Exactly. It prevents the electrical signal from leaking out, which dramatically speeds up the transmission.
So it makes the thought faster.
Much faster. A thought traveling down an unmyelinated dirt path might move at, say, a walking pace. But a thought traveling down a heavily myelinated superhighway moves at hundreds of miles per hour.
That is incredible. And to truly grasp the density of this jungle we were talking about, we really have to look at the scale. Because it is not just a few roads in there.
No, the scale is what truly humbles you when you study the brain. In just one single cubic centimeter of human brain tissue.
Wait, a cubic centimeter? Like literally the size of a sugar cube?
Yes. In a volume the size of a simple sugar cube, there are more of these synaptic connections than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy.
That gives me literal chills. A sugar cube of brain matter contains a whole galaxy of connections.
That is the level of infinite complexity and potential you carry around inside your skull every single day.
Wow.
Every single choice you make today, every thought you allow to loop endlessly in your head, every emotional reaction you choose to indulge, it is actively, physically sculpting this vast internal galaxy.
So you are not a passive observer of your mind?
Not at all. You are the architect of a biological universe.
Okay, but this brings us to a really dark question. I mean, playing devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If neuroplasticity is this incredible, godlike superpower, if we have a galaxy in our heads that we can mold at will, why is everyone so utterly miserable?
It's the million-dollar question.
Right. Why are we all walking around chronically stressed, full of anxiety, and permanently stuck in these terrible cycles? If we can build anything, why are we building prisons?
Because the brain is completely, relentlessly agnostic.
Agnostic.
Yes, it possesses absolutely no moral compass regarding your happiness. This introduces the concept of maladaptive plasticity.
Maladaptive plasticity, meaning it adapts in a bad way.
Yes. The brain does not sit back and evaluate whether a neural highway is good for your mental health or whether a thought pattern is making you a kinder person. It operates purely on cold, hard efficiency.
It just wants to do things faster.
Exactly. It only measures one single metric.
Frequency.
How often do you drive on this road?
Oh, wow. Okay, so if I spend 3 hours a day mentally complaining about my life, analyzing every tiny slight against me, and imagining worst-case scenarios, my brain doesn't step in and say, hey, this is making him depressed, let's stop.
Nope, not at all.
It just says, message received, the boss wants complaining to be highly efficient. Bring in the construction crews.
That's exactly what happens. You are funding the construction of your own misery.
That's terrifying.
If you constantly fixate on negative outcomes, if you hold on to anxiety like a protective shield, you are sending a biological mandate to your brain. You are actively laying down thick layers of myelin over those negative networks.
You're paving the anxiety road.
You are building heavily fortified, high-speed neurological superhighways for stress, fear, and resentment. You literally become biologically optimized for misery.
Optimized for misery.
Yes, it takes zero effort for you to feel anxious because your brain has completely mastered the sequence.
I am laughing, but it is deeply, deeply terrifying. We practice anxiety with such sheer dedication that we become gold medal Olympians at it.
We really do.
My complaining superhighway is fully funded. It has an electronic toll booth and a little rest stop.
And probably a drive-through.
Exactly. So if we have spent the last 20, 30 years building these massive, terrible highways, how do we tear them down? We can't just go in with dynamite.
No, but the good news is the brain has its own built-in demolition crew.
Okay, thank God. What is it?
It is a biological process called synaptic pruning. You have to remember that the brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ. It only accounts for about 2% of your body weight.
Okay.
But it consumes roughly 20% of your body's energy. Therefore, it has to be obsessively efficient. It operates on a strict, ruthless, use it or lose it principle.
Use it or lose it. So how does the pruning actually work? Is it a physical breakdown of the road?
It is entirely physical. The brain contains these specialized immune cells called microglia.
Microglia.
Think of them as the gardeners of the brain. When there is a neural pathway that you stop using, the electrical current stops flowing through it. The brain eventually realizes it is wasting precious metabolic energy maintaining a dead road.
Makes sense.
So it tags those synapses, and the microglia literally physically consume and dissolve the synaptic connections. The pathway withers away. The jungle reclaims the road.
And the sources make a huge point about this. The catch is you cannot just erase a negative thought loop by willing it away.
Oh, definitely not.
Like if you have a massive 6-lane highway dedicated to the thought, I am a total failure and an imposter, you can't just put up a mental roadblock and say, don't think about that.
Precisely. And this is where most people fail when they're trying to change their mindset. The brain hates a void.
So you can't just think of nothing.
Right. If you just sit there and actively try to stop thinking a negative thought, you are actually still focusing intense cognitive attention on the concept of the negative thought.
Oh, like don't think of a pink elephant.
Exactly. You are still sending electricity down that network. You cannot simply delete a highway. You have to build a bypass and deliberately route all the traffic there instead.
Which introduces the strategy of the active pivot.
The active pivot, yeah.
Let's walk through what that looks like in real life for the listener. Say I am at work, I make a small mistake on a presentation, and my automatic thought fires down the superhighway. I am completely incompetent, I am going to get fired. What is the active pivot?
The active pivot is an immediate conscious interruption. The moment you catch that thought firing, you do not argue with it.
Why not argue?
Because arguing with it gives it energy. You pivot and force a new thought. I made an error, but I am highly capable of learning and adapting.
No, honestly, initially, doing this feels absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, it feels like a blatant lie.
Your brain screams, no, you aren't capable. Look at the typo on slide 4.
Right. It feels like a lie because, neurologically speaking, it is a weak signal.
It's that jungle path again.
Yes. You are trying to drive a mental Ferrari through the thickest part of the jungle, while the perfectly paved highway of self-loathing is right next to you, practically begging you to take it. The old negative highway is fast, it's frictionless, and it's so familiar.
And the new positive thought is a painful, slow trek through the underbrush.
But if you force yourself to take the jungle path anyway,
what happens biologically?
Biologically, what you are doing is profound. You are forcing the brain to fire a completely new sequence of neurons. You are laying down the very first dirt path of a new habit.
And you're starving the old one.
Exactly. By refusing to engage with the old negative thought, you are starving that massive superhighway of electricity. Over time, through sheer stubborn repetition, the I am capable path gathers myelin and becomes the expressway.
And the old one.
Because you aren't driving on the I am a failure road anymore, the microglia come in and prune it away until it is gone. It is a biological battle of attrition. You are starving the negative and feeding the positive.
And this physical changing of the brain is not just happening at the microscopic synaptic level, right?
No, it's macroscopic too.
Because the research highlights that our daily routines, our habits of letting go, and our emotional regulation literally alter the gross anatomy of the brain. They focus on 3 key structures that physically change shape and size based on how we use our minds.
Yes, the macroscopic changes are undeniable. First up, we have the prefrontal cortex.
The logic center we talked about earlier?
Exactly. This is the highly evolved region right behind your forehead. It is the CEO of the brain. It handles logic, rational decision-making, long-term planning, and impulse control. It is what makes us uniquely human.
So what happens to it when we change our habits?
When you practice mindfulness, when you deliberately pause before reacting to a triggering email, neuroimaging shows that this area literally thickens.
It kins, like a muscle.
Yes. The cortical density increases. It gains mass and becomes the dominant force in your daily decision-making.
Wow. And then we have the antagonist in this story, the amygdala.
Ah, the amygdala. This is a small, almond-shaped cluster deep within the older primitive part of the brain. It is our fear processing center.
The panic button.
It is the alarm bell responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, in our evolutionary past, a highly reactive amygdala was fantastic for dodging predators in the savannah.
But today,
it treats a passive-aggressive text message like a literal lion attack.
which is exhausting.
It is incredibly exhausting. But studies show that when you practice consistent emotional regulation, when you actively practice letting go of control, the amygdala actually physically shrinks.
Wait, it gets smaller.
Its cellular volume decreases, the alarm bell gets smaller. You literally become a person who is biologically harder to frighten and stress out.
That is the best news I've heard all day. And the third major player is the hippocampus.
The hippocampus is deeply involved in forming new memories and contextualizing our emotions.
How does stress affect it?
When you are chronically stressed, your body is flooded with cortisol. which is actually toxic to the hippocampus over long periods. It damages the cells.
Yeah.
But when you actively work on rewiring your brain through positive grounding practices, the hippocampus sees increased activity and volume. It regenerates. This helps you process complex emotions effectively with context, rather than just reacting blindly to the present moment.
Okay, this brings us to a concept in the material that absolutely blew my mind. There is this biological algorithm operating in the background called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS is phenomenal.
The way it is described, it functions like the ultimate, highly customizable focus filter for your entire reality.
That's exactly what it is. It is a network of neurons located at the brainstem, and its primary job is to filter out unnecessary information so that only the important data gets through to your conscious awareness.
Because there's too much data, right?
Right. Way too much. At any given second, your brain is bombarded by millions of bits of sensory data. The hum of the refrigerator, the feeling of the fabric on your skin, the peripheral movement in the room.
If we noticed all of that.
If your conscious mind had to process all of it simultaneously, you'd go instantly insane. You would short circuit.
Right.
So the RAS acts as the ruthless bouncer at the VIP club of your conscious mind. It decides what gets in and what gets ignored.
And the craziest part of this mechanism is that you get to program the bouncer. You literally hand him the guest list.
Yes.
If you spend your time obsessing over threats, feeling victimized, and expecting the worst, you program your RAS to look for danger. The bouncer will make absolutely sure you notice every angry face on the subway, every piece of terrible news, every slight from a coworker. It filters out the good to prioritize the threat.
Exactly. It operates on confirmation bias at a purely biological level.
But we can change it.
We can. If you practice active gratitude and focus on abundance, your RAS flips. It receives a new guest list. Suddenly, it starts automatically scanning your environment for opportunities, for positive interactions, for solutions to problems that were actually sitting in front of you the entire time.
But you just couldn't see them.
Right, your bouncer was previously turning them away at the door because they didn't match the threat profile.
Which makes me think deeply about how we structure our lives today. Modern society, with the relentless 24/7 news cycle, the endless doom scrolling on social media platforms, the constant barrage of fear-inducing notifications.
It's relentless.
We are essentially keeping our collective societal amygdala permanently inflamed. We are constantly programming our RAS to look for disaster. We are living in a chronic state of biological threat.
It is an epidemic of manufactured stress. We are biologically reacting to abstract digital information the exact same way our ancestors reacted to a physical predator in the brush.
The body doesn't know the difference.
The nervous system doesn't know the difference between a real lion and a looming deadline or a scary headline. The chemical cascade is identical.
The research makes a really profound point about countering this. They note that modern humans have developed this almost pathological avoidance of being alone with their own thoughts.
We drown out silence.
We really do. If we are driving, we have a show on present company, except to, of course, keep listening to us.
Naturally.
But if we are cooking, there is music. If we have 3 seconds in an elevator, we are immediately scrolling.
We can't handle the quiet.
But taking the time to just be alone in absolute silence is presented in the sources as a profound act of rebellion. It is not just relaxing. It is deep biological healing.
Silence allows the nervous system to recalibrate. When you remove the endless external inputs, your brain no longer has to process incoming threats.
The bouncer gets a break.
Yes. The hypervigilance drops. The amygdala powers down, and it allows the prefrontal cortex to come back online, enabling deep reflection and the actual processing of emotions rather than just distraction.
Which leads us to the most crucial rubber meets the road part of this entire discussion. We have talked about the psychological traps, the external mirrors, the neuroplasticity, the superhighways, the amygdala.
We've covered the map.
But knowing all this science is completely useless if we do not apply it. Insight without action is just expensive entertainment.
Well said.
Okay, if my brain is a dense jungle of negative pathways, how do I practically start swinging the machete today?
The overarching goal of the daily interventions we are about to discuss is novelty. Autopilot is the enemy.
Autopilot is the enemy. Got it.
Autopilot simply maintains the old, heavily myelinated highways. To force the brain to lay new tracks, you have to introduce deliberate, slightly uncomfortable novelty.
Let's run through these because some of them are incredibly surprising. They aren't just sit down and think happy thoughts. They are highly specific physical cognitive interventions.
Very specific.
Let's start with the naps. They recommend 20-minute power naps, not 2 hours, exactly 20 minutes. Why is that specific duration biologically important?
It is all about a neurochemical called adenosine. Throughout the day, as your neurons fire and consume energy, they produce adenosine as a byproduct.
Like exhaust.
Think of it exactly like cellular exhaust. This exhaust builds up in the brain, binding to receptors and creating what we call sleep pressure, which is that feeling of grogginess and mental fog you get in the afternoon.
So a quick nap clears the exhaust.
Exactly. A 20-minute nap is the biological sweet spot. It is long enough for the brain's clearance systems to sweep away a significant amount of the accumulated adenosine, essentially rebooting your cognitive processing.
But why not sleep longer?
Because it is short enough that you do not cross over into slow-wave deep sleep. If you sleep for 45 minutes and wake up in the middle of a deep sleep cycle, you experience sleep inertia.
Oh, when you wake up feeling like you don't know what year it is.
Right, you feel worse, sluggish, and disoriented. 20 minutes resets the nervous system without the hangover.
Okay, here's one that sounds like a bizarre party trick, but the neuroscience behind it is wild. Brushing your teeth or writing with your non-dominant hand.
It's surprisingly effective.
If you are right-handed, you use your left hand. I actually tried this morning. It is infuriatingly difficult. I felt like a toddler. I spilled toothpaste everywhere.
It is infuriating because you literally have no neural highway for it. When you use your dominant hand, the sequence is deeply myelinated. It requires zero conscious thought.
But the other hand?
When you force yourself to use your non-dominant hand, you are abruptly forcing the two hemispheres of your brain to communicate in a highly novel way.
You're forcing the jungle path.
Yes. You are creating a massive spike in electrical activity, forging brand new synaptic connections in your motor cortex. You are demanding that your brain build new infrastructure just by brushing your teeth.
It forces you to be hyper-present. You cannot zone out and plan your day while trying to brush your teeth with your left hand.
It really can't.
Okay, what about this next one? Counting backwards by 2s, 3s, or 4s while going for a walk. Wait, really? Just doing basic annoying math while walking down the street?
I know it sounds silly.
How does that actually rival deep emotional therapy for changing my brain?
It is not about the math. It is about the principle of dual task interference and cognitive load.
Okay, break that down.
Walking requires an enormous amount of subconscious processing, spatial awareness, balance, motor control. By adding a complex, non-habitual cognitive task on top of it, like counting backwards by 3s 100, 97, 94, you are forcing the prefrontal cortex to work in absolute overdrive.
And why is that helpful?
Because the brain has limited bandwidth. When you force the prefrontal cortex to engage heavily in this novel dual task, it has to pull resources away from the default mode network.
The default mode network.
That's the part of the brain responsible for mind-wandering, ruminating on the past, and worrying about the future. It is where anxiety lives.
Oh!
By counting backwards while walking, you are literally starving the anxiety network of its electrical power and forcing the brain to remain agile and present.
You are distracting the brain from its own misery by giving it a complex puzzle. That is brilliant.
A great hack.
They also suggest learning 50 words of a new language before a trip, or listening to dense, highly complex subjects while engaging in vigorous physical exercise.
Again, it is about pairing the physical body with a mental challenge. And physical movement itself is a cornerstone of neuroplasticity.
How so?
When you engage in intense physical movement, particularly things that require balance or bursts of energy like jumping, you change the chemical environment of the brain. You trigger the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF.
I have heard of BDNF described as miracle grow for the brain.
That is exactly what it is. BDNF physically promotes the survival of existing neurons and encourages the growth of new synapses and dendrites.
So it makes the brain more adaptable.
Yes, it prepares the soil of the brain so that when you try to learn a new habit or pivot a negative thought, the new pathway can take root much faster.
But let's be deeply realistic for a second. We can talk about neurotrophic factors and prefrontal cortex thickening all day long, but when you wake up at 6 a.m. and try to start doing these things, when you decide you are going to write in a journal every day, or practice pivoting your toxic thoughts, or brush your teeth with your left hand, Your brain will fight you tooth and nail.
It will put up a massive fight.
You will experience massive, overwhelming internal resistance. Suddenly you will feel bone tired, or your inner voice will convince you that this is all just pseudoscience. Or you'll just say, I'll start tomorrow when I'm less stressed.
That moment of intense resistance is the pivotal moment of the entire process. You have to understand what that resistance actually is.
Right.
When your brain invents an incredibly logical-sounding excuse to skip a day of your new habit, that inner voice is not telling you the truth. It is not an accurate reflection of reality. It is not a sign that the habit isn't working for you.
So what is it? Why does my own brain try to sabotage my progress?
It is simply an old, dying neural pathway throwing a biological tantrum.
A tantrum.
Remember, the brain is an energy conservation machine. The old, negative highway wants electricity. When you stop using it, it starts to starve.
Though it fights back.
Yes, and right before a deeply ingrained neural pathway is pruned away by the microglia, there is often what psychologists call an extinction burst.
An extinction burst. That sounds dramatic.
It is. It's a sudden, violent surge of resistance and craving. Your brain is trying to force you back onto the easy, myelinated road to conserve energy.
Wow.
When you hear that voice saying, this is pointless, just give up, you'll never change, you have to recognize it for what it is. It's a dying habit, begging for a lifeline.
Yeah.
You just have to let it throw its tantrum and proceed with the new habit anyway.
That reframing is an absolute game changer. It takes all the morality and guilt out of it.
Exactly. It's just biology.
You aren't lazy. You want a failure. Your biology is just trying to be efficient, and you are acting as the executive overriding the system. And to help navigate these moments of intense resistance, there is a beautiful, highly effective metric for decision-making that really stood out from the sources, the love versus fear metric.
This is perhaps the most elegant tool for instantly shifting your brain state out of autopilot.
How does it work?
Before taking any significant action, before hitting send on a heated text message, before accepting a new project, before deciding to skip your new habit, you pause and ask yourself one simple, piercing question. Am I making this choice out of love or out of fear?
So if I am staying in a job that makes me absolutely miserable, am I staying out of a genuine love for the work and the growth it provides? Or am I staying out of a paralyzing fear that I won't be able to find anything else?
Right.
Or if I send a passive-aggressive text to my partner, am I acting out of love for the relationship's long-term health or out of a fear that I am losing control and need to assert dominance?
Exactly. And the magic of this question isn't just philosophical, it is intensely biological.
Because of the brain regions involved.
Yes. Fear is processed deeply in the amygdala, the primitive reactive survival center. But love, connection, long-term vision, and higher-order purpose, those are processed in the prefrontal cortex.
Oh, wow.
When you pause in the heat of the moment and ask that specific question, you literally interrupt the circuit. You force the electrical activity out of the reactive amygdala and channel it forcefully up into the logical, highly evolved prefrontal cortex.
You are manually taking the steering wheel back from your primitive survival instincts.
It is a manual override for the human nervous system.
That is incredible. So if we pull all of this together and connect it to the bigger picture, letting go of emotional baggage, breaking decades-old vicious cycles, releasing the frantic need to control every single outcome, none of this is a passive, helpless surrender.
Not at all.
It is not sitting around waiting for the universe to magically align your stars. It is the highly active, biologically intense, rigorously disciplined process of starving old neural pathways and building new ones through relentless daily routines.
You are literally reshaping your mind.
You are dismantling a prison, brick by microscopic brick, and laying down the foundation for an entirely new reality. And that brings us to the core takeaway for you listening right now. You possess the ultimate superpower. You are not a helpless victim of your past programming. You are not doomed by the subconscious algorithms that were downloaded into your brain when you were a toddler.
You got the control.
You are the conscious executive manager of your current neuroplasticity. You have the ability, backed by hard neuroscience, to architect your own mind.
The science unequivocally proves that change is not just a poetic metaphor for personal growth. It is a tangible physical reality waiting for your daily instruction.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to mull over as you go about your day. The science makes it incredibly clear that your brain cannot distinguish between a real, physical event happening right in front of you and an intensely imagined event happening entirely in your mind.
It's the exact same chemical cascade.
Right. If you visualize a stressful argument, The exact same neural networks fire, and the exact same cortisol is released as if you were actually having the argument. Your brain wires itself based on what you pay attention to, whether it is real or entirely imagined.
Exactly.
So considering that your 86 billion neurons are constantly tirelessly paving new roads based on your focus, what kind of reality is your brain physically building for you in this exact moment based purely on the thoughts you are having right now?